Hello, welcome to today's class. I guess you've heard the cliche that the only constant in this life is change. And that is accurate, that is true. It is true at the personal level as well as the organizational level. By the very nature of the desire of the owners of businesses to develop and grow these businesses comes with the challenge of dealing with the unknown and uncertainty that comes as a result of change. Okay, so this morning's lecture, or this lecture is dedicated to helping managers to understand how to manage change effectively so that you'll not actually break down in the face of change or new situations, but rather you'll ride on the opportunities that changes present in order to develop and grow your organizations more effectively. So on this note, let's dive onto the lecture and see what we have to do in order to deal with change more effectively. Yes, so the learning objectives entails understanding the factors that affect organizational changes. We'll look at the types of organizational changes. We'll look at how managers are supposed to oversee planned changes. And we'll also address the steps managers may take to implement changes in their organizations. So as I indicated earlier, this is a time of unprecedented change in our society. Technology has made it quite a challenge. All right. The products you see today by the next year or two have become obsolete. The service that you might think is the best today, your competitors are thinking about better ways to provide more enhanced services than what you currently have. All right. Even fashion, the clothing that you have today, it's some types of clothing that in time past were fashionable today. If you were to wear them today, you may be laughed at or mocked at. Okay, but that is the nature of change. It is constantly happening. And the most rapid one actually is in the field of technology. And all businesses and organizations must rely on technology in order to succeed and prosper. What it means is that if a business is to survive and to do well in our current business environment, it is very, very important to appreciate that change will happen and to prepare for it when it does. Okay, so organizational change is the transformation in an organization's environment, structure, technology, or people. So the change could be coming as a result of a change in an organization's environment. Here we're talking about changes in both the internal and the external environment of a business. Okay, things could change in the external environment, such as changes in laws, changes in policies, exchange rate changes, interest rate changes, and all of the other variables in the external environment. In fact, key among them will be the change in the taste and preferences of the customers or the consumers that you have to deal with as a business organization. All right, change could also happen as a result of the structure of the organization. If the business is such that it is currently operating with a tall structure and that is making it difficult to address the needs and concerns of their customers and consumers on a timeous manner, it may be necessary to alter the structure and maybe make it more flattened in order to be able to deal with the complaints and concerns of their customers. Okay, so a change could also happen based on the need to revise the structure of a particular organization. And as I indicated, change could also happen as a result of change in the nature of the technology that is currently being employed in the industry. All right, and we see it all over in various types of industries. In fact, some businesses have collapsed because they failed to adapt to changes and the new technologies that were on board in that particular industry. All right, so there is the story of of Nokia. There's the story of Koda, also this company that is into the production of cameras, all right, which failed to actually ride on the changes that were happening in the technology of the industry. So as a business, if you want to survive, thrive, and do well, you must pay attention to the technology in your particular industry, all right? Technology could help you to produce more quality products or render more quality services. It can help you to minimize your cost of production and so on and so forth. So from time to time, your competitors are always thinking about finding better ways to be able to produce or render the services that the industry is known for. So it's very, very important to pay attention to the nature of the technology or the trends in the technology in whichever industry that you find yourself. Transformation can also be happening from the perspective of the human resource or the people that you have in your organization. All right, you may want to change their attitudes, their values, their norms, their belief systems. That is another area that change could be happening. Okay, so organizational change is the transformation in an organization's environment, structure, technology, or people. It could be any of this or the combination of this or all of these areas changing at any point in time. Causes of organizational change. So I've hinted on this already when we're talking about the environment aspect. So largely, the change might be happening as a result of some changes in the external environment or some changes in the internal environment. So there could be changes from the political scape, and political environment is closely related to the legal environment of any country because the politicians ultimately will be those that formulate laws, and you have other agencies of state to implement these laws. Okay, so whenever a law is passed by parliament or signed off by the president, it becomes a law, and then this has the potential of affecting how businesses are supposed to operate. Okay, if you were operating in the banking sector in Ghana, there have been recent adjustment or changes when it comes to the minimum capital requirements of banks. Right? It came because the political regime, the government of the day, felt that that was necessary in order to improve or maintain sanity in the banking sector. So straight away, the banking sector needed to find ways to raise their minimum capital. All right. If you're operating in a country that is not so much into democracy, then it makes the whole issue worse as far as the political environment is concerned, because the government of the day can just get up and pass any law, and then that could either positively or negatively affect your business. So changes could be happening as a result of the political environment. Change could happen as a result of changes in the social environment, right? The taste and preferences, more especially of people, are not constant. They keep changing, all right? Fashion change, their taste for that certain types of goods or services could vary from time to time, most of the time based on their economic status as well, all right? Then we have the technological environment. I've explained this already. We have the economic environment. All of these variables could cause a change in the way things are done in a particular organization. Within the internal environment, changes in management policies and styles could straight away bring about the need for change. Okay, they need to revise some management policies. They need to revise some managerial styles or cause for a change or cause change in a particular organization. All right, systems and procedures might be required to change because of changes happening within the organization. For example, if as organizations expand and get more branches and employ more people, it is very, very possible that the current structures and systems and procedures in place might not serve the organization well. And so there may be the need to revise these systems and procedures. And then, of course, employee attitudes are things that may require some adjustment as the organization advances and grows. Okay, so these are the major areas that may result in a change in an organization. One, it could be coming from the external environment, or the need for change could be coming as a result of some changes happening in the internal environment of an organization. Types of organizational change. What are the various types of changes that might occur in an organization? So we have the first one being strategic change. So sometimes management must adjust the firm's strategy to achieve the goals of the company, or even change the mission statement of the organization in response to the demands of the external environment. So when we talk about strategic change, it is changes, there are changes that basically will occur either through a change in the firm's strategy or a change in the mission statement of a particular organization. Right? Most of the time, strategies are set to be able to help an organization achieve some objective. And then, as much as possible, businesses or organizations must follow their strategy. But certain events might occur, either in the external or internal environment, that may call for the need to adjust and revise the existing strategy of a particular organization. All right. Yes. And there's a connection between the strategy that a company may decide to pursue and their mission statement. So in the same vein, the mission statement of an organization may be revised. All right. For example, we spoke about the social environment, where changes in taste and preferences may render the need for certain products no longer necessary. People probably are no longer interested in that particular product or that service. All right. Will you insist that your organization should continue with the production of that particular product or the rendering of that service? No. If you do that, your business will run at a loss. So it might be necessary for you to revise and make some changes to your mission statement. We spoke about technology. If there are changes in the advancement in the technological tools that are used in the production or rendering of service in that particular industry, such that if you don't change, you might not be able to catch up with your competitors. It is very, very important that you revise that type of technology. And the technology that a company uses to either produce its products or to render any service is part of the mission statement of the organization. Okay, so, but the whole idea is that whether changes will occur in the firm strategy or management will affect certain changes in the mission statement of an organization, those changes are referred to as strategic changes. Okay, so that's the first type of change that will occur, where the firm strategy either is adjusted a bit or the mission statement is revised due to certain changes in the external environment of a business. Okay. The second type of organizational change is known as the structural change. I think I hinted or explained this much earlier as well. So organizations often find it necessary to redesign the structure of the company due to influences from the external environment. Structural changes involve the hierarchy of authority, goals, administrative procedures, and management systems. Okay, so as a business expands, it is very, very necessary that they also expand the structure, the systems that are in place to be able to effectively monitor and regulate the activities in a particular organization. All right, so if you were just say 2 people or 3 people starting a particular company, the structures and the layers you have in that organization wouldn't be much. Okay, but as you begin to expand and employ more people, you move from 100 employees to 200 employees to 500 employees, to the point where you have branches. You cannot use the same structures that you had when you were just 2 or 3 people to when you've now grown to the stage where you have more branches to oversee their activities. Okay, so there might be the need for a change in the hierarchy of the authority. Not that there should be a change in the hierarchy of authority. Goals might be revised, administrative procedures may have to change, and the management systems that are in place may have to be revised in order to address the changes that comes organically as a result of the growth of the business organization. Okay, so the other type of change that organizations are likely to face is the need to redesign the structure of the organization, and it is known as structural change. Okay. So the third type of change is known as process-oriented change. So basically, this change calls for the need to re-engineer the processes to achieve optimum workflow and productivity. So largely, this will be occurring in the production department of any organization, especially if they are into manufacturing. All right. So if the workflow or the nature of work activities in the organization leads to probably a lot of waste of time or waste of resources, there may be the need to redesign the processes in order to achieve some efficiency in that particular area. Okay, for example, if you needed to move from step 1 to step 5 in order to get some output in place, is it possible that you can cut away step 3 and 4 so that we will just have step 1, then to the next step, to the other step, and get the output? Instead of going through 5 steps, you can now go through 3 steps in order to get that particular output. So you may have to look at the processes through which you go through to render a service or produce a particular product, and find out how best you can eliminate some aspects of the value chain that is not so important in order to improve the process of rendering the service or producing that particular product. Okay, so when you re-engineer the processes in the organization in order to achieve higher efficiency and quality, that type of change is what is known as process-oriented change. All right. And the last type of change that organizations will experience is known as people-centered change. And this should be easy to explain because it's people-centered. It's about the human resource in the organization. So there might be the need to alter the attitudes, the behaviors, the skills, or performance of employees in the company. So whenever management undertake any training activity meant to address these things, okay, that type of change is known as people-centered change. So overall, organizations will go through these 4 types of changes, so may have to deal with these 4 types of changes. All right, strategic change, structural change, strategic change, meaning change in strategy. Structural change focuses on structure of the organization. Process-oriented change focuses on the processes in the organization. People-centered change addresses the people, how well to change the people in order to help the organization to achieve its objectives more quickly and cost effectively. We have challenges of organizational change. All right. If you want to be able to bring about a good change that will help the organization to achieve its objectives well, there are some challenges or some issues that need to be addressed in order to make sure that this challenge becomes effective. All right. So the extent of the planning will help managers to be able to deal with the challenges that come with change. If you don't plan, very well, it becomes more difficult to execute the organizational change that management intends to bring about in the organization. So managers need to take steps to set up conditions that permit and even encourage change to occur. So you need to plan. You need to find a way to introduce the change and execute the change in a way that will be acceptable to all your employees in that particular organization. Otherwise, you might get frustrated along the line in your bid to bring about organizational change. So effective change requires that some planning is done in order to make that particular change possible. Okay. Then how easy you can also implement change depends on the degree of change. So changes may be incremental or quantum. Incremental is where it is just a bit of modification to what is currently existent. All right. So it is not so radical. The changes are not really that much. So those type of changes are quite easy to undertake because it doesn't really call for a change, a radical change in, say, the attitudes or the norms and what is known to employees. But quantum changes comes with a lot of challenge, okay, because it's a significant change altering how a company operates. Once it's likely to affect the interests of people, they are likely to challenge that or oppose those changes. Okay, so how easy a change can actually happen also depends on whether the change will be incremental or the change will be quantum. Okay, so the degree of the change will determine how easy or how difficult you can execute a change as a manager. Then the next one is the degree of learning required. So the degree to which organizational members are actively involved in learning how to plan and implement change while helping solve an existing problem. So as it's the status quo, the employees are already working on something, okay? And with the desire to bring about change, what it means is that they must not stop working on their current assignment, but they still have to, in the course of working, still have to learn about the change and find ways to adjust to the change that you want to bring on board. So how easy it is to continue with my current assignment and also learn about the change and probably with time, change from what I'm currently used to the new methods or procedures that have been introduced in my organization. So the degree of learning that is involved will determine how easy or how difficult the change will happen in an organization. So if it is very, very easy to learn about the new change or situation and adjust from what is known to me to what is new in terms of the change, then it is easy for employees or subordinates to embrace that particular change. All right. But if it is difficult to work with what I'm currently involved in, all right, and at the same time learn about the new change that is coming, then it becomes very, very challenging to bring about that particular type of change. Okay. Then the last one is the target of change. Organizational change programs can vary concerning the hierarchical level or functional area of which the change is targeted. So where the change targets can be an important determinant whether that change will be successful or not. Okay, in every organization, we have people with authority and autonomy, and they are the decision makers. All right. So if a change is going to target, say, the top level management in an organization, it must really be a necessary change for it to succeed, because these top guys have the power to shoot down anything that will affect their interests. All right. Compare that to, say, lower level of employees, where they basically have to take instructions from top level management. So what it is that if changes are required to be occurring at lower levels, say shop floor employees, it is easier to scream at them, to control them, to accept the change, compared with where Change is supposed to happen at the top, where those guys are really supposed to be the initiators of this change. If it will affect their interests, the chances are that they are likely not to accept that type of change. All right. So these 4 variables will determine how easy or how difficult it is as management to be able to bring about change in a particular organization. What is the extent of planning involved? And have you, as management, taken your time to plan for that change? All right. Later, I'll be talking much about that and freezing and all of those things. Okay. What is the degree, the nature of the degree of the change? Is it incremental? Is it quantum? All right. That will determine how easy or how difficult it is to implement that change. What is the degree of learning involved? Okay. If it is difficult to learn about the new change whilst currently doing your job, it will be very, very, very difficult for the employees to embrace that particular change. Okay, sometimes it's just the way things are done, right? Shifting from say face-to-face, even lectures, to online presentations. All right. Most people are not familiar and comfortable with online teaching and all of that, and learning about Zoom presentation and setting up a Zoom and teaching people that are not in front of you are things that, if you come to the educational field, people struggle with. Okay, so what is the degree of learning involved in the change that you want to introduce as management? Is it something that your employees can easily learn and adjust to, or it will be difficult for them? That will also determine. Then the last point we explained is the target of change. How powerful are the people that you seek to change? And I said, if it is at the top level, it becomes very difficult because they have power, they have control. If it is at the lower level of the organization, it is quite easy. So the target of change will also influence how successful that change will be executed in an organization. Diagnosing the need for change. So we said change is constant. It's constant in our personal level, at our personal level as individuals, and also at the organizational level. All right. And it's constant because even at the personal level, as you grow, the demands of life will cause you to change. All right. If you were young, probably you have everything supplied by your parents, right? Your food, your clothing, your whatever. You just have to live, and that is it. Some people will be responsible for your well-being. As you grow and you get your adulthood, it becomes your responsibility now to find a work and so on and so forth, and now be responsible for other people. All right. The attitude and the behavior that you had as a child, you cannot use the same type of attitude when you become an adult or a grown-up. Okay. So in an organization as well, their desire to grow organically comes with challenges, and those challenges demands the need to bring change in the way things are done in the organization. Okay, so one scholar known as Larry E. Greener provided or stipulated a model that addresses organizational growth and the change that comes with the growth. Okay, so their model basically helps us to understand the growth patterns in organizations and the necessary changes that accompany such growth patterns. Okay, so they linked the growth that are required to the organizational cycles. As an organization moves from one stage to the other, it comes along with some challenges, and those challenges require some changes or some revisions in the way the organization is currently operating. All right, so there are 5 stages. The first stage she calls creativity. So that's mostly the initial stage of all organizations, right? Especially so if it is a business organization. So the founders of the organization dominate this stage, and the emphasis is on creating both a product and a market. But as the organization grows, management problems occur that cannot be handled through informal communications. So for business organizations, they will always start with founders, sometimes even a founder, okay? If they are founders, that means that they are partners. And most of the time, they may be maybe 3 to 5. In Ghana, maximum of 20 people coming together to form a partnership in order to set up a company or something of that sort. All right. And at that stage, their main focus is to be able to create a product that will be acceptable to the particular market that they are targeting. Okay, so when businesses start, the primary focus of the entrepreneurs or the founders that are seeking to establish this business organization is to be able to come out with a product that will be addressing the needs of a particular segment of the populace. All right, so that stage is what Greener calls the creativity stage. Mind you, these are people that may have the ability to come up with business ideas, but they don't have the skills. They don't have what it takes to be able to manage a business organization themselves. Okay, so if we assume they have become successful in coming out with a product and there is a market for that product, the next challenge for them is how to actually manage these organizations or the business that they have set up. Okay, they have been able to come up with a product. If you take with Apple or any of these companies, there will always be a dominant name or maximum 2 people coming together to form this type of companies. But once they come out with the creativity of coming out with a product and people like the product, now the challenge is how to ensure the successful management, because it gets to a stage where you have to employ more people. Employing more people now call for new set of skills to be able to manage these people. You cannot use the same mindset of creating to manage a successful organization. All right. So if you succeed at the creativity stage, it also brings some managerial problems. So the founders find themselves burdened with unwanted management responsibilities, and conflicts between employees and management grows. All right. Mark Zuckerberg or other inventors, for example, may only be good at, say, coming out with a product or the service, the idea. That is what they are good at. But that is not enough to grow a business. You have to be able to employ people. You have to be able to establish structures in the organization. You have to be able to manage and control the structures for them to work together to achieve the objectives of the organization. All right. So different set of skills and knowledge set is required to be able to do that. So after successful creativity, the problem that emanates is the fact that the founders may not have the managerial skills, and therefore they will be burdened with how to deal with their employees and how to set up the right structures in order to manage this company as well. Okay. So it is at this point that crisis of leadership occurs and the first revolutionary period begins. So at this point, if you want to grow, if you desire to advance your business, the best thing is to find a way to employ a competent manager who will be different from the founders. Okay. And I'm assuming the founders in our example are not people that have the managerial skills. Some may be good at both. Okay. But most of the time, the people that originate the idea might not be good managers. All right. So if that is the case, it is very, very important that you now get somebody to address the managerial problems or responsibilities after the successful creation of the business. Okay. And this is where most businesses in Africa tend to fail, and probably leads to much of the failures of SMEs in our part of the world, because people still want to hold on to their babies, right? They see the businesses as their firstborns, and they don't want any intruders. So whilst they may be good at coming out with business ideas, they may not necessarily be good at the management of these businesses. Okay, so the wise thing to do is that you get to the next stage of the organizational circle where you actually get competent people to run these businesses on your behalf. Yes, they may be taking part of the money by way of salaries and incentives and all that. But at the end of the day, the pie could be greater for all. As founders, you are likely to get more and also employ more people and expand, instead of trying to still manage businesses that you don't have any skill for that particular activity. All right. We see that especially in the educational sector, people, they have the resources to set up universities or any training institutions, but they have no clue as to how, say, a university should be managed and how a university should be run. But because they are the founders, they still want to be the chair of the board, making decisions that they have no clue about. Okay, so most of the time, most businesses struggle because they don't know how to transit from the creativity stage to the next stage known as direction. All right, direction. So the scholar talks about, after creativity, the next stage of the organizational circle is direction. So during this period, a strong manager who is acceptable to the founder and who can pull the organization together is appointed. So as I said, it is possible that the founders do not have managerial skills. So they need somebody that will be able to control and direct affairs of the organization. All right. So you need to employ or appoint a strong manager that will help the organization to proceed as far as the managerial aspects is concerned. Okay, so during this phase, the new manager and key staff take most of the responsibility for instituting direction, while lower level supervisors are treated more as functional specialists than autonomous decision-making managers. So yes, this stage is better than the creativity stage because now we have a manager, a strong manager, somebody with managerial skills in that particular industry to help us manage that business that we have created as founders. Okay, and normally the new manager will have some key staff to support him or to help him in directing the affairs of the organization. Okay, but also there will be lower level supervisors, but these lower level supervisors at this stage do not have any autonomy. They don't have any power to make decisions. They must always come to the manager or the other key staff to seek approval before they can make any decision. So at the direction stage, yes, it's better than the earlier stage because we now have a manager, we have some key staff. But trouble will begin because of the fact that the lower level supervisors have not been given enough autonomy or power to be able to make decisions. Okay, so their complaints begin and the murmuring begin because anytime they want to make any decision, they have to seek for the approval of the new manager or the key staff in the organization. So lower level managers begin to demand more autonomy, and the next revolutionary period begins. Okay. So you can see that these demands are coming because the organization is growing. All right. So as you have more employees, you are likely to have more lower level supervisors, and probably they have to struggle to see either the manager or this key staff. Then they'll start grumbling. All right, why don't you just allow us to be able to make these decisions instead of coming to wait at your office for this long period just to make this simple decision? All right, so as the organization grows, employ more people, appoint more supervisors, this complaint begins to grow, and then that leads to the third stage, known as delegation. All right, delegation. So you have the manager, you have the key staff, but it is not enough, because at this stage, the organization has grown, and you have so many lower level supervisors, and they want some level of autonomy to direct how the organization is done. So this stage often poses problems for top managers who have been successful at being directive. So at stage 2, yeah, it's just the new manager and some key people. So they just command and direct everybody to do what they like. All right. So they may find giving up responsibility difficult. They have become used to directing everybody in an organization. All right. But as we said, that directing is what brought about the complaints from the lower level supervisors. Okay. So something must be done. Something must be done. And that is the third stage, known as delegation. Sorry. When an organization gets to the growth stage of delegation, it usually begins to develop a decentralized organizational structure, which heightens motivation at the lower levels. Okay, so to address the complaints of the lower level supervisors, the change that must happen is to decentralize the organizational structure. So decentralization is where decision-making autonomy and power is delegated or given to managers or officers at the lower level of a particular organization. Okay, so it's an organizational decision to give up some authority to people at the lower level of the organization. And this definitely will motivate the lower level supervisors that we spoke about. They were not part of the key staff. They were not key part of the new manager that was employed. But when decentralization happens, they are equally empowered to be able to make decisions without going back to the manager and the key staff. Okay. But this also brings about some crisis. So eventually the next crisis begins to evolve as the top managers sense that they are losing control over a highly diversified operation. So yes, the lower level supervisors get motivated, they get excited, because now they have been given some powers to be able to make decisions. But then that also brings another new set of challenge or problem. Okay, because top management now feel they have lost control, they have lost power. Okay, they are used to these lower guys always coming back to them to seek for approval, to seek for direction, guidance as to what to do. But once you decentralize, they won't come back to you. They have been empowered to make decisions. And top management now feel uneasy, all right, because they feel they are losing control. Now the lower level guys have been empowered to make their own decisions. So the crisis control results in centralization, which is now inappropriate and creates resentment and hostility among those who had been given freedom. So straight away, what top management will seek to do is in a way go back to the direction stage, all right, in a different form. So they want to, instead of decentralization, they now will want to embark on centralization, where decision-making authority will be centered in some particular place. And once it's top management, that means that they will still want these lower level supervisors and managers to still come to them to seek approval. And we saw much earlier under direction that also creates hostility. Okay, so the third stage is quite interesting. It's the stage where power is given to lower level managers. And once top management do not feel comfortable with it, they now want to go back and take the power that they have given to them by way of centralization. And the problem that we saw in direction also automatically comes up again with people, lower level managers, expressing resentment and hostility because they have lost the freedom that was given to them under the decentralized organizational structure. Okay, so that then will kick in stage 4. So stage 4 is known as control. Okay, so it's meant to solve the problem of centralization that we saw under delegation. So control. So this stage is characterized by using formal systems for achieving greater coordination with top management as the watchdog. Okay, so instead of centralization, lower level managers always come into some key individuals to seek approval. Why not put in place structures and systems where the nature of the systems are such that it is not really about any person going to anybody to seek for approval. You basically have to use these structures if you want the laws and procedures that have been put in place to get things done. So yes, we want to control the way things are done, but we don't want to be seen as those that are in charge of always giving direction to people to get it done. So let's put in place control systems, all right, so that these systems will make sure that people work as we want. Okay, and this I'm talking as a top management official of this particular organization that we're talking about. So top management now will be thinking about, instead of having lower level supervisors come to us always for approval, why not put in place the control systems? Okay, so some organizations have standard operating procedures. If you want to grant a loan, the applicants must provide A, B, C, D. All right. So that is the standard operating procedure. You don't have to go to any supervisor to find out what you should be doing if there is an application for loan, for example, because the standard operating procedure is there. All right. So it takes away the face of top management that lower level managers do not want. But top management only provide oversight responsibility over these control systems and structures that have been put in place. All right. I hope that is clear. So you have systems, you have structures that have been put in place. We have rules, we have policies in place. And so you don't really have to go to anybody. The rules and the policies are there to guide you as to what you can do and what you cannot do. Okay. It helps in solving centralization problem, but that is not the end of the problem as the organization evolves. So it results in the next revolutionary period, the crisis of red tape. This crisis most often occurs when the organization has become too large and complex and is managed through programs or rigid systems. So we said the control stage, it is no longer about top management or going to people to seek approval. It is basically about having systems in place, laws, regulations in place to ensure that things are done well. But you know that then brings about bureaucracy or red tapeism, all right, where you have to follow the standard operating procedure. Sometimes it doesn't make sense. Sometimes it may lead to delays, but in order to protect your job and your sanity, you still have to keep to the control systems that have been put in place in the organization. So that's the problem that comes with it. All right. If the procedure is that the person must provide for acquisition of loan or approval of loan, the person must provide, say, a bank statement, 6 months bank statement with certain amount of money. Check the credit history of the person. The person must provide certain type of collateral, okay, and so on and so forth. You need to make sure, if you're a banking staff, that all these requirements are met. Okay, it could be that in a particular instance, for example, instead of 6 months bank statement, all the other things are okay, but this particular client has just 5 months. They can provide a bank statement that will qualify for 5 months, just for example's sake. But the standard procedure says 6 months. Okay. In order to keep your job, you still have to insist on the 6 months instead of accepting the 5 months. So the control system creates red tapeism, where you have to follow the rigid systems that have been put in place, and that could delay how things are done in a particular organization. All right. So if the crisis of red tape is to be overcome, the organization must move to the next evolutionary phase. All right. And that is the last phase. And the last phase for dealing with or managing organization, if you don't want to use control systems, or if you have advanced from control systems, is to rely on collaboration. Collaboration. Okay, so the last phase emphasized greater spontaneity in management action through teams and skillful confrontation of interpersonal differences. So at this stage, you want to manage your organization by relying on teams, all right? And trying as much as you can as a manager to deal with the differences that comes as a result of people working in teams. Okay, so this time around, you don't want to rely on centralization or top management. You don't want to use a lot of control systems, i.e. rules and regulations and procedures, but you want to promote teamwork. Okay, so people come together to be able to work on their own with lesser rules and regulations or control systems, but they work together in order to achieve some objectives of the organization. So it relies more on social control and self-discipline, all right, instead of the formal systems of checks and balances. Now I want to use team members to put pressure on other team members to work as they are required to do. You want to leave people to their own discretion in terms of their self-control in order to decide how they work in a particular organization. Okay, so for example, there may not be laws requiring when you should report to work. Okay, yeah, or you don't. There may be some laws, but it's not really rigid as control system where you have to come and log in or sign some book to indicate when you reported to work. Okay, but your team members will actually force you to come to work earlier than when it was control system, because you have to work together to achieve some targets. So the pressure they will put on you will actually cause you to follow rules and procedures far better than when you needed to just follow mere rules and procedures. So it's based on social control and also then based on self-discipline. All right. You've gone to a stage where you've advanced yourself where you may be seen as a professional. So nobody should be there to tell you what you can do and what you shouldn't do, and so on and so forth. It is assumed that given the growth that has occurred, you should be able to make some sound decisions on your own. So at this stage, management or the organization will rely on more social control and self-discipline. All right. So these are the 5 growth cycles that businesses are likely to go through and the type of changes that are likely to accompany this type of growth. Okay. So Greener's model shows uncertainty about what the next revolution of change will be. But so after collaboration, what is next? Collaboration, what is next? Is it the very best of all the management approach that could happen in an organization? Okay, he says there is uncertainty about what the next revolution of change will be, but anticipate that it will center on the psychological saturation of employees who grow emotionally and physically exhausted by the intensity of teamwork and the heavy pressure for innovative solutions. So his model got to collaboration, and he felt that if there will be any need again for another approach of managing organizations successful as the organization advances or grows, then that change should be focusing on dealing with the emotional and physical exhaustion that comes with relying on collaboration. Okay, I just indicated to you that sometimes if it is teamwork, the pressure is far higher than when you have to use formal control systems. All right, where people within your team want to make a point. that they are hardworking, they are more effective than you. So it brings a lot of emotional and physical exhaustion. You must live up to the standard of the group or the team that you are working in. So his anticipation is that if there will be any other form of change to deal with the problem of collaboration, the focus should be on dealing with the emotional and physical exhaustion that comes with the collaboration stage. Okay. It's almost an irony because you think that because the organization no longer relies on control systems, employees will have the freedom to do anything that they want. Okay. But the social controls tends to be more powerful than even having control systems. Okay. So that is that for diagnosing the need for change. As the organization grows and advances, there will always be some need for change. And that is what we've just looked at. So we have steps in plan change. So there may be changes that are unplanned. They just occur all of a sudden. Management must react to that. Okay, those type of changes are different from where management on its own must plan a particular change. And this is very, very important because it can help position the organization better than waiting to react to changes. All right. So these are the steps if you want to bring about a planned change in your organization. So step one is to recognize the need for change. The change may be due to either internal or external forces. So the first step is to recognize the need for change. The truth is that if you don't recognize it, the changes happening in the external and internal environment will force you to change. And at that stage, it might not be a planned change. It might be a forced change, all right? You'll be compelled to change. So instead of going through that erratic changes, why not actually analyze your internal and external environment and bring about the needed changes before the events overtake your organization? So first, steady your internal environment, steady your external environment, and find out what is really required to be modified, what should change in order to deal with the changes that are happening in the external environment. Okay, so recognize the need for change. It is also very important to be able to get the reasons why the change is necessary, because it is that those reasons that you use in order to convince the other members of the organization to accept the change that you are proposing. Okay, so until you identify some changes in the environment of the business that requires the need for your organization to change, it might be difficult as you proceed with your aim to bring about the change in your organization. So first, recognize the need for change. Point two, develop the goals of the change. So change should not be done in a vacuum. It should be targeted. It should be aimed at something. So develop, what are you seeking to achieve with the change that you want to bring in your organization? Okay, so both problems and opportunities must be evaluated. Is it a change that is seeking to solve a problem, or is it a change that is seeking to take advantage of certain opportunities? All of that necessary, okay? So if there's a problem that must be addressed, you may have to adjust, otherwise the company will sink. If there are opportunities that your organization must take advantage of, you have to adjust and change certain things in order to be able to take advantage of that. So there must be a goal, the reason why the change is necessary. All right. Then define needed changes in terms of product. What should change? Is it the products of the organization? Is it the technology of the organization that should change? Is it the structure that should change? Or is it the culture of the organization, or the combination of any of this? So it's important so that you don't just walk through the change without really knowing what you are doing. All right. So when you clarify point two or step two, it is very easy. to probably say that, yes, we want to take advantage of some opportunity that we have identified. And the way to do it is probably to come up with a new product or to modify this product in order to address this opportunity or to serve this opportunity that we've identified. All right. So then the change becomes very targeted at a particular goal that the organization is seeking to achieve. All right. So when you solve step 1 and step 2, the third stage is to select a change agent. So the change agent is the person who takes leadership responsibility to implement the planned change. All right. So somebody must have a plan and make sure that everybody in the organization or key players are contributing to bring about the change in the organization. Change will not just happen. It should be intentional, and somebody must be responsible for promoting such intentionality among the key players in the organization. All right. So point 4, when we select the change agents, 4 is to diagnose the current climate. So in this step, the change agent sets about gathering data about the climate of the organization to help employees prepare for change. So what the change agent will be doing is almost like repeating point 1 as we indicated, and probably point 2. All right. The change agent must be able to find out why is it necessary for us to change. So preparing people for change requires direct and forceful feedback about the negatives of the present situation as compared to the desired future state, and sensitizing people to the forces of change that exist in their environment. So that would be the role of the change agent. You should be able to paint the picture or the description of what is wrong with our current system and how well our organization will perform if we were to execute or accept the new change that has been proposed. All right. So you paint a picture of the now and after the change, what really will happen in the organization. And it's only when people see a desirable future that they'll be prepared to change in order to get to the desirable picture that has been painted by the change agent. Okay, so the change agent must diagnose the current climate. If you don't make a strong case for the need for change, people are always comfortable with the status quo. And once you cannot paint a picture of a desirable future, it will be very difficult for them to leave their current state of doing things to embrace the new changes that the organization is proposing. Okay. Then point 5 is to select implementation method. So there could be several ways of implementing that particular change. So you have to deliberate, brainstorm, and select the method that will be best for that particular change that the organization wants to execute. Point 6 is to develop a plan. The plan is like the roadmap. It notes specific events and activities that must be timed and integrated to produce the change. It also delegates responsibility for each of the goals and objectives. So earlier I said that change must be deliberate, it must be intentional. So we must have a plan that tells us what we should be doing. All right. There should be specific events and activities that we have to be embarking upon to bring about that particular change. We should know who will be responsible for what in that particular plan. We should have timelines as to when these people should be doing what. So at the end of the day, change will not just happen because we desired it, but it will happen because we had a plan, and the 7th point, we implemented the plan. Okay, so after all the questions have been answered, the plan should be put into operation, and that is the 7th stage. The last stage is to follow the plan and evaluate it. So during this step, managers must compare the actual results to the goals established in step 2. Change should produce positive results and not be undertaken for its own sake. All right, so this is very clear. So we started with the idea that you need to know the need for change or recognize the need for change. Step 2, we said you need to develop the goals of the change so that the change will not just be change in words, but it is targeted. So step 8 is where you now want to compare what you'll be able to achieve against what you said you wanted to achieve, the goals that you set for yourself in step 2. Okay, so you need to follow the plan and evaluate it and find out whether the positive changes that you painted actually occurred as a result of the execution of the change. Okay. So these are the steps in plan change. There are 8 of them. And it is important that managers embrace these plan changes. All right. As I said, it is always better to initiate a change to address either problems or to take advantage of opportunities than when you don't change and things takes you unawares. All right. At that stage, you will panic and make a lot of wrong decisions in managing your organizations. Okay, so there are oppositions to organizational changes, right? We admitted this from the onset. That is why you need to paint a good picture of why there is the need for change. Otherwise, people will not accept it. Okay, people are always comfortable with the known. Any change at all brings some form of pressure. And until there is a real need, there will be opposition to change. So here are some of the most common reasons employees resist change. There is uncertainty and insecurity. Okay, some changes may call for maybe some departments being collapsed, and this may call for some people being dismissed. Some changes may call for, say, transfers to other places that may not be lucrative as where the employee is currently positioned or working. So there are a whole manner of uncertainty and insecurity that comes with change. And because of that, employees are likely to resist change. You are not just sure. And people are more leaned towards fear than optimism, right? Instead of being optimistic that this change could position me better, most of the time people will be thinking in terms of the negatives, all right? This could lead me to be dismissed, or this change could cause me to be transferred to a very remote area or place that I'm not really interested in, and so on and so forth. So uncertainty and insecurity are the common reasons why employees could resist change. Point 2, reaction against the way change is presented. So that is very, very important. If you just throw it at the face of your employees, even if it is a good thing, the natural thing is that because they feel disrespected, they are likely to oppose that particular change. Okay, so the way top management brings about change, communicate the need for change, and all that will determine the level of acceptance of that particular change. Okay, so if you don't prepare their minds by telling them the need for the change and you just come announcing it at the day that nobody was aware of that, then there is the possibility that the reaction will be negative towards that particular change. Okay, then there could be threats to vested interests. Yes, so it's very similar to point 1. People already have vested interest in the way the things are done in the organization. All right, and if the case is that they are happy with the status quo, their interests are currently being served, then definitely they'll resist the change because they are not very sure what will happen to their vested interests if that change will occur. Okay, so threats to vested interests. I'm currently at a position or a department where I'm able to get some kickbacks or get some form of financial incentives from the way things are done in that particular department. So no matter the case that management present, there is the tendency that people in those departments or units will resist that change because the change, they are not sure whether the current financial incentives that they get from that department or that unit will still flow if the change was to happen in that particular organization. All right. Then cynicism and lack of trust could be another one. They don't trust management. They feel there could be something else that management is seeking to achieve as a result of the change and not what they are communicating to employees. If that happens and it's communicated widely and accepted among employees, the change is likely not to happen, even though it might be a good change. So lack of trust, cynicism could be a great opposition to organizational changes. Okay, and it's very close to the last point, perceptual differences and lack of understanding. If they don't know the need for the change, or they interpret the need for the change differently from what management is presenting to them, obviously it will lead to opposition because they may not buy into the argument of top management. So these are some of the opposition to organizational changes: uncertainty and insecurity, reaction against the way change is presented, threats to vested interest, cynicism and lack of trust, perceptual differences, and lack of understanding. So steps for overcoming opposition, right? We've seen some of them. So how do you limit the opposition? All right, so we have two approaches to change attitudes and behaviors at the individual level. Most of the time, the opposition will be coming from your subordinates or employees. How do you deal with them? First, you can use the three-step approach, or you can use the forceful analysis to deal with that. Okay, so the three-step approach, first and foremost, you want to undertake what is known as unfreezing. So this step involves developing initial awareness of the need for change and the forces supporting and resisting the change. So unfreezing basically is coming from, say, ice block, right? Ice block is solid, right? If you want to cause any change to that block, you need to unfreeze. You have to allow it to melt. Okay, so there are already established patterns of behavior, norms, belief systems, culture in a particular organization. And this culture tends to be very strong. And as we've kept saying, normal people will not want to deviate from what is known or what they are used to. So there must be the need to emphasize the need for the change. You need to bring awareness for the need for the change. You must make a strong case. And at this point, what you're seeking to do with the communication is to make people let go of their known patterns and behavior. All right, that's the unfreezing stage. Okay, they are used to some things. They are used to certain behaviors. So you're communicating to them about the need for a particular change because you want them either psychologically or in reality to start to begin seeing something wrong with the way that they are currently behaving, or the way that the procedures and the techniques that they are currently using, so that they will agree to let go of their existing behavior, their existing pattern of work, their existing culture and norms that exist in a particular organization. Okay, so that is the first stage of the unfreezing. So the ice block, you want to unfreeze, you want to melt it, all right? Because until you are able to make them aware of the deficiency in the existing system, it will be very, very difficult for them to embrace the new changes that you will be proposing to them. Once you make them aware of the deficiency and the weaknesses of their existing behaviors and norms, as far as the organizational aims and goals are concerned, it becomes easy to move to the second stage. Okay, so unfreezing is to make them unfreeze, let go of the way that they are used to behaving and doing things in an organization. All right. Once step one becomes successful, they now recognize they need to let go of the old patterns of behavior and so on and so forth. It might, at that stage, also even help you to know those that are opposing and probably concentrate on them to convince them the reason why they should accept the change and so on and so forth. Once you work on that, on their mindset to accept the need for the change, then the second stage comes in. It becomes easier to then go into the change stage. All right. So the next stage is changing. So this step focuses on learning new behaviors. So after you have unfreeze, you now introduce the new behavior, you introduce the new skills that you want them to acquire, you introduce the new knowledge that you want them to have. And that is the changing stage. So you don't start with step 2 when step 1 is not successful. We've discussed that. Okay. If you start with step 2 with that step 1, it is likely you are likely to face a lot of resistance. So if you unfreeze, you can now introduce the change. That is basically, you can now help them to learn the new behavior, the skills, the norms, the culture that you want to bring on board. Okay, so change results from individuals being uncomfortable with identifying negative behaviors and being presented with new behaviors, role models, and support. So at this stage, you've made them aware that their old ways of behavior, their skills level, their knowledge level is down. And so now you want to bring something that is better than the old one. And at the change stage, you actually introduce your employees to the new behaviors and the skills and the knowledge or whatever you want to bring about in your organization. All right. So you create new behaviors, role models, and the support system. Very, very important. Okay. So if you want people to shift from some method of work to another method in terms of, say, technology, it is very, very important that you train them to get to know, okay, how to use the new technique, the new machine, the new equipment, or new technology before actually you start with that particular technology or that particular equipment. All right. It will almost be immoral to ask your employees to use a new system that you've not had time to train them on. Okay. So it's very, very important to provide the support systems that will help the employees to embrace the change and actually go through that transition successfully. All right. Then the last stage is refreezing. So we started with unfreezing, where we want them to let go of their old behavior and attitudes and performance, way of performance, and so on and so forth. Then we have introduced the new behaviors, the new attitudes, and the culture that we want. So we now want to solidify the new things that we've introduced to them. Okay, so first we melted our ice block into liquid to let go of attitude. Then we brought about the change that we said we needed. It is time to now emphasize these new changes, these new attitudes that we brought on board so that it becomes the norm and the new culture of the organization. So that stage is the refreezing stage. So refreezing centers on reinforcing new behaviors, usually by positive results, feelings of accomplishment, or rewards. So you can use rewards, you can give recognitions and praises that will make them feel that they have accomplished something great. All the motivational tools in order to entrench and reinforce the new behavior that you want your employees to have in your organization. All right. So these are the 3 steps in order to be able to deal with opposition to organizational changes. And the most critical, if you ask me, is the first stage. Okay, until you convince them to see something wrong with the existing systems and way of working, the other stages will not be successful. They will oppose the change that you want to bring in your organization. Okay, then we have the force field analysis. So it's very, very straightforward analysis proposed by Kat Lewin. It says any change at all will normally have forces known as drivers. So drivers push towards a solution to the problem. So the drivers, as the name suggests, will drive the change that will bring the solution that is needed to solve a particular problem. Any change at all that you want to bring will also have resistors. Okay, so resistors inhibit improvement or solution to the problem. So the analysis is very simple. Identify the drivers and identify the resistors to the change that you want to bring about in your organization. So to apply the model to a problem, a manager should follow these steps. Point one, carefully and fully specify the problem or the status quo. A problem may be defined as the difference between what currently exists and what should exist. So clearly it's similar to unfreezing. Let them know the existing situation, the status quo, and what is wrong with it. Point two, define objectives. A manager must consider what the situation will be like when it is solved. So paint a picture of what the future will look like if employees were to embrace the change that you are proposing. So that picture will be created through the objectives that you set for the change. Okay, point three, brainstorm to determine the driving and resistant forces that contribute to the problem. Okay, so get to know what are the driving forces and resistant forces if you now want to solve the problem at stage one. What is wrong at stage one? What are the driving forces? What are the resistant forces? Analyze these forces more fully and develop a strategy. So once you identify your drivers and your resistors, come out with a strategy. This strategy should be aimed at strengthening the driving forces and weakening the resisting forces. So you want to use your strategy to promote the forces that support the change in order to facilitate the implementation of the change. And the strategy should weaken those, the strength or the force that actually is opposed to that particular change in order to make the change effective. Okay. Point five, compare strategy against the company or departmental objectives. A manager must consider whether his or a problem-solving strategy will promote a change in the status quo. So at the end of the day, you want to find out after the execution of the change or the strategy, you were able to meet the objectives that you said you wanted to achieve from the change. And the objectives basically is to meet some higher objective or some higher departmental or company goal. Okay, so that is the last stage. Right. So we have organizational culture changes, right? So the changes that we've spoken about could occur anywhere. We said we have structure, we have technology, we have what again, processes must change. Then we also spoke about people, okay? By giving the importance of people, and that is within the arena of culture, cultural change. It is important that we lay some emphasis on that. So that is why we have this subtopic dealing with organizational culture changes. Okay, so culture and people change in an organization refers to a shift in employees' values, norms, attitudes, beliefs, and behavior. That is at the heart of any organizational change that you want to bring about. You remember unfreezing, okay? For any change to happen, technology cannot actually change itself. Processes can't do that. So at the heart of any change at all is to find a way to change people change, or to change the culture of the organization. And that's culture change. So very, very important if we want to bring about change in an organization. So people change pertains to just a few employees, such as when a handful of middle managers are sent to a training course to improve their leadership skills. So whenever we talk about people change, it's basically some few number of employees that we want to change in terms of either training or development, okay? But culture change pertains to the organization, such as changing an organization from a bureaucratic structure to a more participatory environment that focuses on employees providing customer service and quality through teamwork and employee participation. All right. So the basic difference is that when we're dealing with people change, we simply dealing with some few number of people. But when we talk about culture change, it is an overall organizational change that must happen. All right. Say changing from a bureaucratic structure to more participatory structure. It's an entire organization-wide type of change that we're talking about. Okay. So one of the tools or the approaches that have been used of late to bring about the need to either change people or culture or both is through organizational development. Okay, and programs and courses in organizational development are becoming popular because, as I said, yes, if you want to change structure, if you want to change any of the dimensions of an organization, the processes, if you want to change the technology, it all boils down to changing the people in an organization. And that is the specialization of OD, organizational development. Okay, so organizational development focuses primarily on people processes as the target of change. Once you get people to change, all the other things can be taken for granted because it will take the people to bring about those changes. And OD specializes in that. Okay, so this approach applies behavioral science knowledge to plan development of organizational strategies. Okay, so the strategies might be good, but if you don't have the right employee attitudes, norms, behaviors, and culture, it will be very, very difficult for you to achieve the strategy of the organization. So OD focuses on people and how to change their norms, how to change their attitudes, their behaviors, in order to successfully execute the strategy of an organization. All right, so the aims of organizational development are as follows. They want to build an atmosphere that encourages cooperation, eliminates conflict, increase motivation, improve problem solving, open lines of communication, and develop mutual trust. All right, so if you were to build these traits in your organization, all things being equal, that organization should be well positioned to be able to achieve its objectives or goals. All right, so they use several tools. They rely on consultants, they rely on surveys, group discussions, training sessions in order to build the right type of culture in an organization. Okay, so specific or common techniques used at this meeting will include sensitivity training, and it's a method of changing behavior through unstructured group interactions. As group people interact in group, they pick up certain behavior and culture. So that is sensitivity training. They could rely on survey feedback. It's a technique for assessing attitudes, identifying discrepancies in them, and resolving the differences by using survey information in feedback groups. All right, so that is that technique too. They could use process consultation, and that involves help given by an outside consultant to a manager in perceiving, in understanding, and acting upon interpersonal processes. Okay, so you can have an OD consultant to come and assist you if you want to work on the attitudes and the behavior of your employees. They rely on team building, and this includes interaction among members of work teams to learn how each member thinks and works. If you remember somewhere, we're talking about social control. Okay, once you work in a team, you can learn from others to improve the way you work. Then we have intergroup development, involves changing the attitudes, stereotypes, and perceptions that work groups have of each other. Okay, so these are some of the techniques that OD professionals are likely to use and organizations are likely to use to achieve their goals of bringing about change in employee attitudes and behavior. All right, so this brings us to the end of our discussion today on organizational change. And I want to emphasize that what I started with, it is very, very important. Plain change will happen, but how it happens is very crucial. If you don't plan for change, it is likely to have a toll on the organization. But the planned change, because it's intentional and deliberate, is likely to help to position an organization to either take advantage of opportunities well or address certain problems before they become very threatening to an organization. So on this note, I want to thank you very much for your attention.